Okay, now we come to the ambient and clean guitars, and this is also a perfect spot to talk about the following point. Now, although your whole track is existing on a one-dimensional line between your left and your right speaker, you can really imagine the whole song to actually fill up a whole three-dimensional space. And the way I like to look at this is left and right is, of course, you're panning left and right. Up and down you could view as your frequency range. And back and forth is loudness and reverb and air and all that stuff that I'm still going to consider now and then when it's appropriate. For example, in the ambient guitar. If you want your guitars to really sound ambient and fill up the space and sound wide, then you can use a lot of reverb for this. So this already also shows you do not use reverb excessively on your lead guitars or your vocals, because then those will sound very washy and they lose a lot of clarity, but you would want them to be pretty precise and noticeable. But for the ambient guitars, a lot of reverb is very recommendable. So for example, I got 2 ambient guitar tracks right here. I usually like to record one not just with single notes, but with a simple 1 octave chord. And the next one also with the same line with the same octave chord, but 1 octave down. So you get nice fullness in there. So unmixed and unmastered, it sounds something like this. So you could hear in the fade out, there's a lot of reverb and a lot of delay in it. Gives it a nice spacey effect. So both of those ambient channels go into one bus channel. And in here, again, of course, first thing I do is EQ. I don't use compression on the ambient guitars because they're distorted pretty much already, and that's fine to me, the way they are. So EQing. What we want to achieve with the ambient guitars is for them to have a lot of clarity and also really fill up the upper space and all the whiteness, you know? So to get more clarity in there and to avoid them interfering with your rhythm guitars and other stuff, first thing again is a high pass filter. Bam! I put this pretty high at about 150 Hertz to really get rid of the muddiness, and the change is pretty obvious in here. There you see it takes out a whole lot of the lower muddiness that we do not want in there. So to further get more clarity in there, I like to reduce the whole muddy mid section around 500 Hertz. 500 Hertz is a very, very dangerous frequency that you need to care very tenderly for, because it makes stuff sound boxy and honky and annoying. That's why we also reduce this totally in the kick drum. And to further give it more presence and cut through the mix a bit better, we boost the trebles at around 3.7 kilohertz. Now again, be careful you don't boost it at the same spots like other instruments, and then cut out the fizz. And this is how the EQ setting generally for my ambient guitars sound like. So before and after. Now, what I like to do next is put a cloner there. Now, what a cloner does is pretty cool. It just takes the original signal and copies it to the left and to the right channel, but with a slight detune and a slight delay. So this adds a whole lot of roominess and space in there. Now, if your DAW doesn't have a cloner or anything like this, what you can also do is, I bypass the cloner for now, turn this off. You put in there a stereo delay. You can leave the mix at 50 or perhaps 40, keeps it a bit cleaner. Then pull down the feedback to 0 on both sides, so you get only one delay hit now. And then you turn off the sync, so you get the millisecond option. And then on one, you could do about 20 milliseconds, and on the other, about 40 milliseconds. And this also adds a lot of stereo whiteness. So listen to before and after. Sounds equally good as the clone actually, but the clone it's a bit faster and easier. So there's a nice trick for you. Now to the clean guitars. Let's single the clean guitars. Now again, unmixed and unmastered, they sound something like this. As you can hear, they have a pretty hard pick attack. And also I like to have a lot of reverb and delay on the clean guitars. Now first thing we need to do is even out the pick attack and raise the whole thing to a bit more equal level. But not as much as the bass guitar. Remember the bass guitar we totally evened out. But on the clean guitar we like a bit more dynamics. So I just put a slight compression in here with a ratio of about 2:1 and an attack of about 15 milliseconds. So you still get a bit more of the pick in there, because if you put it very fast to 0.1 milliseconds or something, then you pretty much lose the pick attack and it doesn't sound as clear anymore, because then it's too evened out. But I like to just put it at something like this. And then the release also a bit slower. I just put the auto option in here. When you turn this off, it puts it to about 300 milliseconds. And that's fine. And then apply the threshold, so it's compressing a bit, but constantly. And then before and after, it sounds like this. Okay, what I forgot to mention, for this song I tracked the clean guitar 2 times, one 50% left and the other 50% right, and then both again go to one bus channel. So then again EQ, my first EQ I took out the 2.3 kilohertz a bit, because there's some annoyingness going on in there. Just cleans up a bit. Then again, the next EQ, very important what I do again first is a low cut at about 100 hertz to again avoid it interfering with something else. Then another reduction at the lower midsection, and this furthers the purpose to not merge with anything else and to get more emphasis on the clarity. And then, of course, to enhance the clarity and sparkle, I like to boost around 5 kilohertz. This really makes it shine nicely. And then to also sit better in the mix, I like to boost the mids at 1 kilohertz. And this pretty much makes it fit very nicely. Now, at first you may feel the clean guitars and ambient guitars, they lack too much of fullness and you like them to be a bit warmer. But trust me, the chords on clean guitars still sound very nice and full, at least to me, and in this way they really sit better in the mix when you got a lot going on, like in this section, because you do not want those things to merge or interfere with your rhythm guitars, because the rhythm guitars are more in the lower mid section, so you got to take out some of the lower mid sections on the others to really make everything sit nicely and clean and make it fit in there. So now it sounds something like this all put together. What I forgot to mention, of course, again, applying the volume. So how I went about this is I first did the clean guitars, so mute the ambient guitars. Clean guitars, again, you put to 0, then listen to what you got, and bring it up again till it just sits nicely in there. And then the same with the ambient guitars. But with the clean guitars also intact now, because now you need to find a balance that the clean guitars and the ambient guitars don't overshadow each other, or you just don't want the whole thing to be overloaded. So make sure you find a good balance in there. Also, another good point to mention here now is automating the volume of your rhythm guitar. It's a very important tool to use because you want to be very pedantic. So if there's more stuff going on, like in this part now with clean guitars and ambient guitars and a little piano up there, then what you might want to do is automate the volume of the rhythm guitars to be reduced at about, I don't know, -1 dB I usually put there. So if you look up here, see there usually I just have it at 1 dB. And here is the automation going on. The slot in here, you can choose what parameter to automate. I just chose the volume. And then if you click some dots in here, you can really control the volume however you want it to be. And then back here, I just automated to go 1 dB lower. In this way, the rhythm guitars give a bit more headroom for the other stuff when they come in, and then it doesn't sound too overloaded. So again, very important thing, automating your volumes here and there then again. For example, back here, again, it's automated, especially when solos are coming in. You also definitely need to automate your rhythm guitars to get lower, to leave more space and more room for the lead guitar to get in. And then everything sits way better. So that was it for the ambient and clean guitars. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something out of this. And stay tuned for the next part.